So the Detroit Lions get good news and bad news all at the same time. No NFL roster is perfect, but the Detroit Lions are moving more and more toward a roster that, quite frankly, is solid. But there's a couple of tough spots. But Dan Campbell went to the podium and he was talking about roster cutdowns and the difference between this year and his first year on the job. And the difference is stark. On Tuesday, he acknowledged there's really only 5 or 6 spots up for grabs on the 53-man roster. So in this video, we are going to talk about where some of those spots are, and then we are going to talk about the one spot, that's the bad news, that I don't know how to fix. Now, I trust Brad Holmes, and I trust he won't allow this to destroy this team, but it's about time to make a move, and it's about time to make something happen. All right, so Dan Campbell was talking on the differences on roster day cuts between just a couple of years ago and now. He said it's changed significantly. I mean, shoot. In 21, we were wide open, literally wide open, Campbell said. You had an idea Sewell was going to make it. We drafted him 7th overall, and you had an idea of some of these guys. But there was a whole roster of we have no idea. We don't know who's going to be the next receiver, linebacker position, the D-line. It was wide open. If you look back to that team, it really was wide open. Like, any wide receiver could have made it. Any wide receiver. You knew St. Brown was going to make it, but that was it. He was a 4th-round pick. Any linebacker could have made the team. It was crazy. All right, he goes, so now, here we are. You feel like you've tied down most of these spots. We're going to have to let go of some good players, I think, ultimately, that I think can play in this league at some point at different positions. That's the hard thing to do, but it also shows where our roster is at that point. It's grown a ton. Brad's done a heck of a job. And so, like, when I look at this, I just think about how much better this is. And when I go through the roster, and we can do that right now, when I go through the roster, I'm like, where are people going to be let go? Especially, believe it or not, on the defensive side of the ball. All right, when I look at the defensive backfield, usually you keep 5 corners. All right, the Lions have Terrion Arnold, Amick Robertson, they have Khalil Dorsey, they have Carlton Davis, they have Ennis Rakestraw, they have Kendall Vildor, all right, Stephen Gilmore. Like, they got 6 or 7 guys that I think could easily make this roster, but you're going to have to cut it down. Good players are going to be cut. That's exactly what he's talking about. Now, I think we start with 6. I don't know if Terrion Arnold's going to be good and healthy and ready to go. We'll see. When you look at the safety position, usually you keep 4. That one's a little more straightforward to me. All right, it's Branch, it's Joseph, it's Melifonwu, but then is it Joseph? Is it C.J. Moore? Is it Strickland somehow who's been balling out lately? The linebacker position. Are you kidding me with this one? Anzalone, Campbell, Rodriguez, Barnes, Jalen Reeves-Maben, Ben Nyman. Like, 6 guys. Like, easy. All right? Ty Summers, Beauplan has been balling out. Those 2 guys balled out in the game against the Chiefs. I don't know what they're doing in practice. And the same thing happens in the middle. All right? Defensive tackle, usually keep, 5? We got Reeder, we got McNeil, we got Pecco, we got Onwuzurike, we got Martin, we got Wingo. Somebody's got to go. Who's it going to be? Like, there is depth everywhere. This is a good problem to have. All right, but that's when, about on the halfway point here, I want to switch over to the problem that I see. All right, on the offensive side of the ball, sure, you got Goff, you got Hooker at quarterback. At running back, you got Gibbs, Montgomery, Reynolds, and Vaki. I think there's more than enough depth there. But that's where the extreme depth stops on the offensive side of the ball. Tight end, like you have Sam Laporta and then nothing to write home about. I like Brock Wright. All right, I do. I like the potential of James Mitchell. All right, I like Parker Hesse. But, like, these aren't guys that you're like, they need to be on my roster. The offensive line, right? I like the idea of Christian Mahogany. I like the trajectory of Colby Sorsdahl. I like Michael Neese, but none of these guys, again, are backups where you're like, let's do it. All right, there are unrestricted free agents or undrafted free agents that are pushing them. And then you get to the wide receiver room. And that is where you have the problem. All right, you have three guys: St. Brown, Williams, Calif Raymond, and then behind that, nothing has been proven. And the problem that we have here is that you have the three guys. Okay, how do I want to put this? You have Williams, you have St. Brown, and Raymond. All are looking good. Like Raymond and St. Brown, they're locked in. They're on this roster. Isaiah Williams has been the only other wide receiver that has flashed consistently. I want to make sure everybody hears me say that. Doris Fountain flashed in the beginning of camp. Donovan Peoples-Jones flashed for like 2 minutes. Caden Davis flashed for a big play, all right, in a preseason game. Nobody else has done anything with consistency, not named Tom Kennedy. Again, another slot guy. What do we do at that position? And so I think you need to start looking other places, but here's the problem. Pride of Detroit, let's give them a shout out. They did another great article where they were talking about one receiver that could be cut from every team in the NFL that the Lions could look at. Now, you have to understand, waivers, we're not where we used to be. We're not going to get the pick of the litter here. So you got like Zach Pascal. Great, but he has regressed greatly in the last few years. All right? Chris Blair, he's played in one game. Malik Cunningham. All right? Not a lot of obvious fits here. Justin Shorter, stop me when you see a name that you're like, I love it. All right? Terrence Marshall Jr., Colin Johnson from the Bears. All right? Bouncing around the NFL. Hakeem Butler. Like, we need a big body receiver. Michael Woods, no thank you. Ryan Flournoy, maybe, but he's a 6th-round pick that has been quiet in preseason. We had our own version of that. It was Antoine Green. All right? Brandon Johnson. All right? Like Malik Heath. John Mechie. Good. I like the idea of John Mechie. But he's 5'11", 186. Is he big enough? Is he big enough to play that? All right? I like the Mechie idea. Maybe we do a trade for him ahead of time. DJ Montgomery. All right? Now, this one is interesting with the Colts because if you're me, I'm saying, look, Alec Pierce hasn't worked for you. He's a guy who has elite athleticism. He's extremely fast. He has the body that you're looking for, but maybe you trade for Alec Pierce, and then they're happy keeping Montgomery. Maybe that's a situation that could work for the Lions. Jags, Tim Jones, Cornell Powell, Jalen Guyton. Like, okay. Hasn't been fully healthy. Cornelius Johnson, I like the ceiling on Cornelius Johnson. 7th-round pick this year. But at the same time, like, you can't wait for a rookie to put it all together. You need someone who's going to be ready, and he's going to be ready now. Like, there just simply isn't a lot of people. Tyquan Thornton for the Patriots, still Juju Smith-Schuster's out there. The one name that I see on here that I liked was Isaiah Hodgins. I talked about him when we went live last night. He's had a couple of decent years. He's had good playoff games. I think he could be a guy that would make sense. We got a close look at him in our joint practice, I guess is the way. That's what it's called, joint practice. We got a close look at him. Isaiah Hodgins doesn't look back. That makes sense to me. And Ronnie Bell makes some sense to me too. Maybe that's because I'm a Michigan guy and a Michigan fan, and I remember Ronnie Bell doing things. But again, he's not that big-bodied receiver necessarily that you're looking for. I mean, he's got some height, but not much. The last name that I like, that I think is worth looking at, is Treylon Burks. I think the reason I like Treylon Burks, the reason I like Hodgins, the reason I like some of these other players is because they haven't played with a quarterback that's given them the opportunity to succeed. All right, Treylon Burks, I understand, has been a huge disappointment. Remember, the Titans traded away A.J. Brown and then used a first pick on Treylon Burks, and now all of a sudden he's being released, like very possibly being released. I think this is very, very interesting. I'm not sure if it would be a trade because I don't know if you'd get him in waivers. I don't even know if they're going to cut him. But he is that big-bodied receiver that you're looking for. And I think playing with a quality quarterback like Jared Goff in a quality offensive system like the Lions have, he could be a guy who could thrive in that and actually has even more skill and be a better player than Josh Reynolds was. So the good news is we only have 5 or 6 spots available. The bad news is that 2 or 3 of them are at one position. So the good news, again, is that we have a bunch of spots, very few spots because this roster is so talented. The bad news is that the wide receiver room, while the top looks really, really good, the bottom does not. So that's kind of my thought on this video as we're moving in to the last preseason game. Let's watch what these receivers do. Let's see if Donovan Peoples-Jones can step up and be a good receiver. He's the one that I know it's weird, but I still have hope in. All right. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Let's watch some preseason football. Go Lions.